liberal without a home who exposed ACORN. Imagine the type of response I was getting on Facebook and other places. My friends were dropping like flies. I was called a traitor. I was called a Uncle Tom. I was, told that the white people were using me, and there were no white people using me. No one was there. It was just me alone, with the ACORN folks threatening me left and right. So I started figuring out that if the mainstream media wasn't going to cover the story, I was going to push it out there. And I started getting on Facebook and Twitter and writing my blog. And my blog, if you first read those first posts, it's like when your voice is a little scratchy and then it kind of catches on. And I was writing personal posts, and then I realized I could use the blog to expose ACORN. And that's what I did. I wrote a 4-part series on ACORN and the housing crisis and traced it back to Herb and Marion Sandler out of California, who sold their company to Wachovia right before Wachovia went under. I wrote about their shakedowns with Sherwin-Williams, how they were out there using the people, how most of their activities would be considered RICO by anyone else. If the right wing was doing that, they would be under the jail. So this is the type of stories that I was putting on my blog. And eventually they started to catch on. People on Facebook were paying attention. People on Twitter. And I had never interacted with conservatives, so it was funny when they found me funny, and they thought we had stuff in common. So I'm sitting there and I'm tweeting, and people are responding back to me, and I'm starting to realize maybe I'm the one with the problem. I wasn't seeing very clearly, and that conservatives weren't these evil, hateful, racist people that I thought they were.
Yeah, we are.
And maybe I needed to stop being so programmed. And that was the thing. It's like you're coming out of a cult. You get deprogrammed and you realize the things that you thought were not true. And especially for me, because when I believe with all of my heart. So this goes against everything that had been the foundation of where I was going and where I thought I was going to go in the future. So I started making friends on Twitter. I joined Smart Girl Politics. I started working with American Majority and the Patriot Caucus and these different other sites. And then eventually, Smart Girls started sending me around the country, training and working with their people on voter registration and voter fraud. That was the eye-opener right there. Going around to different places all across the country and meeting the same type of person. Honest, God-fearing, loving America, who doesn't have a racist bone in their body. And then turning on the news at night and hearing Chris Matthews and that darn woman, what's her name? Rachel Maddow, talking all this crazy stuff about racism and people being spit on at the Tea Party movements. I was at the 9/12, the first one. I was at Glenn Beck's 828. And a lot of times, some people don't recognize me. They don't know who I am. I'm just another black face in the crowd. Do you think I ever experienced any racism? No. When I did experience racism was at CPAC. And it was from the liberals. I spoke at CPAC 2010, and you would have thought I got up there and advocated we all go back to Africa. When I got home, it was horrible. My blog was full of nasty comments. My email was full of nasty comments. Someone told me they had never seen a coon at a Klan party until they saw me on the CPAC stage. That was all coming from the left, because you know what? I stepped out of my place. And then Bill O'Reilly picked it up. He picked up the New York Times story and he declared war. He played the voicemail and he went up against public editor Clark Hoyt. Only problem is, around that same time, the abortion doctor was killed, I think in Kansas. And O'Reilly had to go on the defensive. And it seems like he's been on the defensive ever since. I don't know if you guys watch O'Reilly, but lately he's trying to play that middle role in his interview with Obama, and he let it drop. And at the same time, Glenn Beck picked it up and he ran with it. So because Glenn Beck was keeping it out there, and I did a couple of shows, Eric Shawn on Fox News, the news side, ACORN sued me. In June of 2009, they sued me for $5 million. I was in the dollar store with my daughter picking up stuff when my phone started going crazy. I picked it up, and it was all these reporters I had made friends with when I started telling the truth about ACORN and getting it out there. Anita, what do you think about this lawsuit? Anita, do you have any responses? What are you talking about? It's like ACORN just sued you for $5 million, and they sent it to every reporter in their book. So the guy sent me over a PDF copy of the lawsuit, and I'm just sitting there. I just immediately got my daughter, got in the car, and went home. I'm just sitting there reading through pages and pages of accusations. It was probably about 30 counts, thinking, what am I going to do? I didn't have $500 to give to ACORN, let alone $5 million. And that's when the conservatives showed me the right way. And I'm just going to be honest, and some of you aren't going to like this, but I say conservative because when I went from being an ex-liberal, I didn't become a Republican. I just was an ex-liberal for a while, and then I became a conservative. The Republicans approached me almost immediately, and they were like, oh, Anita, we've got this legal defense fund right over here set up for you. We just need you to come out to some press conferences, and we're going to push you out there and everything else. They basically wanted me to be a pawn and to control me. Then a group of conservatives stepped up, and they said, you know what? We don't want anything from you. We want you to keep telling the truth. We want you to keep getting out there. We want you to keep writing, and we will fund your legal defense. You just get out there and do your thing. The Center for Individual Rights in D.C. became my D.C. counsel, and the Graves, Bartle, Marcus, and Garrett out of Kansas City, Missouri, was my main counsel. My legal fees were upwards of $1 million, and they never asked me for anything. Not to do a fundraising letter, not to get out there or anything. They just wanted to expose ACORN and to keep me to be able to get out there. So my case actually set case law in the District of Columbia, because what happened is they sued me under the Lanham Act. The Lanham Act says that if you're using someone's logo for interstate commerce, you can be sued for violating their trademark. But my blog it didn't have any ads on it. It wasn't about making money. It wasn't about revenue. It was about informing the public. So the judge threw out that, and it stated that if a blogger is trying to perform a public service by exposing corruption, they cannot be sued under the Lanham Act because it does not engage in interstate commerce. When they dropped, yes, it was wonderful, because when they dropped that, that was the meat of their $5 million lawsuit. The rest of it was made up of lies and innuendos that couldn't be proved. And the day we were supposed to take depositions of their top ACORN people, they wanted to settle. They didn't want to go forward. They were like, we were hoping, we had our fingers crossed because we had enough to nail them, and we were hoping if they took depositions, they would have to lie. And if they would have to, there was no way they were going to be able to answer those questions. So they wanted to dismiss it. And I agreed to it because the terms were so favorable. If there were any documents that I could have, whether they be 5 or 55,000, those documents are completely mine. They leave me alone and drop all charges, which is great, because if Daryl Issa ever subpoenas me, I am ready, willing, and able to turn over everything I have. And it is a lot. And some of those people are going to go to jail. And I'm just hoping that Issa has the guts to do it, because former founder Wade Rathke has already written on his blog, chieforganizer.org, that Issa's seat is very vulnerable, and that if he doesn't leave ACORN alone, he will not win the election. He's threatened him openly. And they've started this liberal campaign right now against him. So I don't know if he's going to stand up and do it, because if they push the black vote against him, he could lose his seat. And some people are not politically courageous. So we're working with Michelle Bachmann and Steve King, who are politically courageous. I saw them in CPAC this weekend. And Steve King keeps an ACORN in his pocket every day. And he hands one to Issa every time he sees it. He probably gets tired of Steve King and those ACORNs. But he's committed. Michelle Bachmann is committed. We're meeting with her next week to talk about some other things that ACORN is doing, even though they have declared that they're dead. So they're not dead. They're still out there. They're still working in the communities with different names. They're here in Alabama, too. They were when I left. That's how I found out about ACORN, is because they were setting up an office over there in Homewood. They're on Beacon Parkway. They haven't gone anywhere. We've got voter ID bills pending across the country. And you know what Project Vote and ACORN are doing? They're out there in each of these states pushing these people to say voter ID bills are racist. It's a poll tax. It's a Jim Crow whatever. And they're stopping us when we're trying to get out there and have free and fair elections. So the more we try to stop their voter fraud machine, as I like to call it, the more they push. And Project Vote is the one that's doing the pushing. So that's who I'm telling people to focus on in 2012. They're the ones that are going to be doing these massive voter registration drives in the community. They're the ones that are filing the lawsuits to stop us when we try to introduce voter ID bills or bills just not to have fraudulent registrations be allowed through. Some states, because of being sued under Section 8 of the National Voter Registration Act, which is the one that they use for minority. It's the one that they use to keep minorities from voting. But when they're sued under Section 8, it basically looks at their civil rights history. So in Harris County, Texas, for example, they have to accept every single voter registration that comes through, fraudulent or not. They have to accept it because they signed an agreement that's in effect until 2012. How many other states have been coerced and harassed and had their arm twisted into signing these kind of agreements? We have to be proactive. The next step in this movement is to get out there, and people ask me all the time, how do we do outreach into the minority community? And I tell people, it's not about reaching out, it's about reaching in. We have to show that these areas that we left for ACORN and let them organize because either it was too hard or they're the ones that said that they were the only ones that could do it, that we care about all of America and we're going to take all of America back. We started a Tea Party in Sheila Jackson Lee's district down in Texas. Some people like to call it a black Tea Party, but it's not. We put tea parties where people live, where the members live. So we put it in a minority urban neighborhood because we're going to show them. After 40 years of social programs, your neighborhood looks like someone dropped a bomb on it and left. Give the Tea Party 2 years. 2 years in your community, and let's see what a difference we can make. And we're not offering social programs, we're not offering handouts, we are offering sweat equity. I'm willing to put my bandana on and get out there and paint your building, or help you stock your shelves, or start a business. We've got people that can write business plans, people that know how to get grants or small business loans. You've got to get the money cycling back into the community and show them that capitalism is not a bad thing. And that's another reason why we started the Tea Party, because also there is a lack of patriotism in the black community right now. They've been pushing, especially John Edwards, he pushed this whole 2 Americas thing. There's one America, and some people in the black community don't understand that. So we named our Tea Party after Crispus Attucks, the first person to die in the Boston Massacre right before the Revolutionary War started. This was 100 and some odd years before slavery was abolished, and this former slave felt that this country was worth dying for, even before slavery ended. So we have to show people that from the beginning, black, white, we all died for this country because it's a great country. And we've got to be, we've got to teach the kids how to get out there and love this country. And I'm not saying that in the black community. They want us to feel isolated and marginalized. So I'm hoping that other people, and this is not the new ACORN, all of these tea parties are locally run and operated. I come in and I help them and I train them, but they set them up themselves and they run it themselves. So I'm hoping that people across the country will take the initiative and go out into the communities that we may have forgotten about, or the ones that we drive by. This is the effects of the Great Society, and the only way to stop it is to get out there and get involved. I saw it today in Birmingham. I came down here for a funeral about 6 months ago. It was a bad time. I wasn't really paying attention, and I left the next day. I was riding around downtown today, and I just couldn't believe what I saw. I saw Century Plaza was closed down, and I'm like, the Democrats have run the city into the ground. And it's time for us to go into the areas that aren't being developed and help develop them. And that's not the River Chase and whatever. It's those areas right there in the heart of Birmingham that used to be our lifeblood, and now it just looks dead. So I thank you all for coming out, and I hope you understand that I am committed to doing this, and I'm committed to coming back to my hometown with solutions and not just ideas and great little things that we can talk about. We started this in Texas because Sheila Jackson Lee really needs to go, but we're going to persuade this across the country. She's an idiot. I mean, 2 Vietnams, come on, guys. But thank you so much for coming out, and once again, I want to apologize that I was late, and if anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
You said there was an ACORN office in Homewood. Is it under the name ACORN, or has it got another name?
It was. I can find out what the new name is. People haven't really been paying attention in some of the smaller areas. They've been looking at the Louisiana and the New York ones, and Chicago, of course. Yes?
Something that was new, been news this week about Mayor William Bell sending these people up to Anchorage, Alaska for a convention, and they're already broke, and they don't have the money to spend. Spending what was it, like $360,000 to send it for 168 people for a neighborhood USA. Is that it? That convention. I was just wondering if that that name rings a trigger, because you was talking about they were operating under names.
I'd have to look at it, but I know that William Bell, I remember him from when I was coming up, and he is part of that corrupt establishment. I'm surprised he wasn't dragged out in handcuffs along with Mayor Langford.
Wow.
I know, he was lucky. He was riding on the coattails of the civil rights movement. No one wanted to touch Arrington.
Well, he's dug his heels and he will not budge.